Heather Fisher, thank you so much for taking time out of your very busy schedule to be with us on the Meaning Project podcast. Welcome.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
So excited for our conversation. I'm just going to dive right into it because you and I have had many conversations over the years, and I'm sure we'll have many more coming up here soon. And as we were texting about this, I mean, it is pretty obvious. Nobody that knows us has either ever accused either of us of being short on words. So I'm excited to see where this may go.
Me too. Me too. Happy to be here.
Let's just get right to it. Heather, what brought you to the vocation, which truly it is a vocation, the vocation of coaching?
Yeah. I would say I've been asked this question a lot, and I would say it's not a traditional path, meaning I've heard a lot of people that have come through maybe a role in human resources and they've learned about it in this way. I came in a little different way. So, from a corporate background where I've been focused on people, leadership, communication, always had an interest in helping people grow and learn. And I love to learn myself. And as I continued in the business world in a leadership role, I really started to dial in on the fact that what gave me the most joy and brings me the most energy is sitting with someone, helping them get more clarity on who they are as a person and helping them slow down enough to figure out where it is that they want to go and then just listen and help them as I coactively come alongside them to help them achieve that.
Okay, that is so good. There's so much goodness in that. I love that. But this is a me question, right? Because I am just curious. We've known each other for quite a while. We've traveled together. We had the blessing of traveling with you and your husband and our close friends to Switzerland because you had been there. You'd lived there for work years ago. But
Yep.
I've never quite known, like, what did you do before this? What was your war? Who were you before you were this amazing coach?
Yeah. Thanks for asking. I'm going to give you the answer that you're looking for, which is that corporate world. What did I do? And I'm going to start a little bit earlier and then pivot to that because I had my first job as a 14-year-old growing up in rural West Virginia at a gas station and family restaurant.
Of course you did.
Of course I did, as you do as a
Right.
14-year-old in West
And
Virginia.
I mean, honestly, my only thought there is only 14. Heather, why not 11?
Well, my parents would have no, 14. Yeah, you're right. Probably could have done it at 11. But I add that because I think I learned a lot about people
Sure.
and I was a server in college too. And if you've ever been a server or you just engage and interact with the public, you learn a lot from people. And so I think that's actually foundational in who I am and how I started to understand who people are and maybe how they're different from each other and that's interesting. So I bring that in. And then if we fast forward through all the other things that happened between those years, my last thing before coaching was in the corporate world. I worked at a large diagnostics company, healthcare diagnostics, and I started out in a role on phone part-time and then training customers part-time in a portfolio offering that the organization had. And again, I was teaching people, I was helping them on the phone. So I can look back and see this thread of me helping people in different ways over my life. So I moved from that then into sales and did that for some years, and then a lot of marketing in various roles throughout the organization. And then, as you mentioned, in 2017, I got the opportunity, my family as well, to move to Switzerland, where I was the head of digital marketing there in the business process area and stayed there for 3 years, moved back to the US, and then I was the head of a transformation office. And this, I think, Dan, is where I would say the coaching started to bubble up for me. So, transformation office, what's that? It's
That's exactly what I was going to ask.
what is that even? There was a lot of change in the organization. There was a new CEO. There was about half of that leadership team was new. We started asking people to lead in a different way from this command and control directive, kind of how it had been when I was there, to, hey, let's ask people questions and let's give them the opportunity to, maybe be clear on the what and why, but let them figure out the how in their subject matter expertise. And that's really not how leaders had led in the past. And so I just really started to resonate with the language that was used, how we described this. And as part of my coach training, when I was still in that organization, started to really align to maybe this passion that I didn't know existed in me. And then took one more role in that organization where I was part of strategy and operations. And so a variety of places
Yeah.
I had been throughout the organization, but leadership was something that was always really interesting to me, less from a title perspective, more from a that thread. I get
Mhm.
to help people. I get to think about like what do I see in them that they don't see in themselves? How do I help them be the best versions of themselves? And so that corporate experience where I got to learn a lot about the business world, I think helps me be able to be maybe differentiated in the coaching I do because I've sat in that seat and I understand it's really challenging in that space.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to dive into that idea of leadership and communication. But before I do, for the listeners and really for myself as well, your work in a diagnostics company is very different from my world of diagnostics.
Oh, good point. Yes,
You're
that's
right. So
true.
what exactly what do you're not out there throwing out labels like, well, you might be depressed or there's PTSD and there's some anxiety, right? But what does it mean to be a diagnostics company?
Yeah, so I work specifically at a healthcare diagnostics company that had a large portfolio in various areas. I started out in the molecular space. And so, if you can imagine going to get some sort of testing from your doctor, maybe
Mhm.
you in molecular space, you might have infectious diseases are pretty commonplace for people. They might recognize that. Or just very I won't go too technically deep there, but then the one that's probably the most common and the biggest area at the time was the centralized diagnostics. What does that mean? That is when you go get your annual blood work done and they're checking for your cholesterol and your triglycerides and maybe your blood count, all of those things. So all of that testing that helps clinicians be able to diagnose you, whatever test they're running on you. This company that I worked for had, maybe tissue diagnostics. You had a biopsy that you need sent away and you want to get results from that. So, all of these different facets are areas of your body that require testing from a healthcare perspective to help diagnose you. This is this is where I worked.
That is so fascinating and such a difference from my world because I know the place where you were and I remember their building, their campus and how it grew in the times when I lived near it in representation to how much we do diagnostics for health and annual blood tests and things like that. That makes a lot of sense to me. And it's kind of cool that here this one company was with all of this, as you said, a large portfolio of testing. Whereas in my world, in order to do diagnostics, I have 700 different companies producing different assessments or inventories or tests
Yeah.
to help diagnose. So that's very interesting in the healthcare world. So for me, kind of a psychology nerd, that's interesting. Hopefully the audience found that interesting. I thought it was fascinating. Maybe even more, I love, talking about the language of leadership. And that's often
Mhm.
been my role in working in different companies and doing consulting with leadership teams is you make such a great point. Leadership is so much about language and communication, right? That idea of, I need you to do something. So the way I tell you, go do this, or as you said, asking questions, kind of like parenting in some ways. Tell me a little bit about your style and maybe what you teach in this leadership coaching.
Yeah, so I think one thing that I believe I said earlier that I'll dig into a little bit because it's one of my favorite things is this word empowerment. And when I was working with leaders who were being asked to empower their teams, do
Mhm.
things differently, let their teams really, you hired them because they're experts in this specific area. And as you're a leader now, stop working in it and start working sort of on it. And what we noticed was is that leaders would then be like, "Fine, okay, you're empowered to go do it." But then people were saying like, "I don't have any direction." Well, I'm not supposed to give them direction. Or am I? You told me not to be directive to them. And so there was a learning curve here. And what really I settled on is this empowerment framework that I use today with leaders when I do coaching. And it's a pretty simple, most things I think are simple. Doesn't mean they're easy to do. but
Right.
simple in the fact that what I help leaders see is the importance of sharing with someone on their team the what. Here's what it is that we need to do. So you have a North Star, a vision somewhere you're going. Here's what we need to do. And then here's the why. And the why always needs to come along with the what. And the why is going to help me understand how this connects to that bigger thing, the North Star. So if I give you the what and why, and then importantly give you any guardrails. So you have to be within this budget, you have to use these resources, it needs to be done within this time limit, whatever those guardrails are. Then I hand it over to you and I say how you do it or how your team does it. You are fully empowered because what I know, you probably do too, is the way I would do something isn't always the way someone else would do it.
And that's such a great point. And something I've learned later in life is that the way I would do it may not always be the best way, even though as a younger professional, maybe I thought it was. So that's so true. I love that idea of offering people, well, autonomy, empowerment, choice. And I'm sure you get better results when you empower people to do these things.
Well, it becomes exciting because now I know what I'm supposed to do and I know why it's important, right? So there's that purpose part that comes with it because oftentimes as a leader, we might know the why, but we forget to communicate that. And so, if you look at statistics, there's a lot of people, and you know this probably better than me, floating around that just don't feel attached or connected or feel like they have that purpose. The more I can help them understand the why, the more they feel like their role is meaningful and I'm doing something that matters.
You said my favorite word.
I
I
know.
feel like I should. I know you see. I saw that look in your eye. I feel like I should do the Pee Wee Herman Playhouse thing. Yay, you said meaning. That's such a good point. And as I'm rereading some from Frankel, I'm reminded that whatever the job is, whatever you're doing, if you understand the why and
Mhm.
even the who you're helping, there's so much meaning to be found there. And people enjoy coming to work when it has meaning, right? It's not just a grind or a drudge or, oh, I have this project to do. When you understand the why and there's meaning behind it, it becomes a vocation, it becomes a calling and not just a job.
Yeah, that's right. I love that. Yeah.
So one of the things you also talk about in your coaching, and so we talk about meaning. Tell me about purpose. I know you are amazing.
Mhm.
Just in a casual conversation, we talk about helping people find their purpose, and I just love that process that you go through. What is that like for you?
Yeah. I would say some people are more or less open to talking about purpose because it can be really vulnerable for people to talk about that. Sometimes it might feel easier, even though we feel like we're in the grind, it may feel a little safer, a little easier just to do the thing and not really think
Mm,
about your purpose. What I notice when I'm coaching people is if you're feeling stuck or unfulfilled or untethered, just kind of floating around like you're not sure. Oftentimes, I can link it back to a couple things, and I think they go hand in hand. One is values, do a lot of values work with people. If you show up every day and you're doing things that don't align with your values, over the course of time, you're not going to feel fulfilled. You're not going to be able to align to that purpose that's especially meant for you. And so I love to do this work hand in hand with people, identifying what are their values and then looking at their day to day and saying, okay, how does what you're doing, how do your actions align or not to what you say are your values, your deeply held beliefs? That's how I characterize a value, my deeply held belief. And then looking at what's important about that to me. Why do I feel called to do that? Why is this work sort of aligning to what gives me energy? And I talked before about coaching gives me energy. That's my purpose. My purpose and my calling is I want to help others grow and thrive. The way I do that is through coaching. You and I can have the same calling or purpose. We can say, I want to help others grow and thrive, but the way you do it might look different. So the way I operationalize it or put action behind it is coaching.
okay, so maybe I have so many great questions here, but you keep leading me in amazing paths. Let's talk about that. The way you and I would do things different. How do you envision your coaching or just coaching in general being
Mhm.
different from psychotherapy or counseling? That's a question I get often when I put
Yeah.
on my different hats. People are like, well, what's the difference? How
Yeah.
would you answer that?
Yeah, I have answered this a lot for clients because I think both are really important for people. So for me, it's not a is it therapy or is it coaching? It's not an or, it's an and. And I think there's good reason to have both of these resources in your life. When I think about coaching, I pick up from where someone comes in today and they start to talk about what does success look like for them. If I ask them and I do, like, hey, if you were to look ahead and we'd worked together for a year and I saw you out on the street or a friend saw you out on the street and they're like, wow, something's different. Like what did what's different now? How do you feel different than last year? Whatever you would say is starting to help me get a hint for where you want to go and who you want to be and where I might be able to start leaning in and helping you get there. That's very present to future focused. When people have things that are holding them back, because they've had experiences in their past, because there are unresolved issues or unidentified areas that are causing them to not be in their current present or to get where they want in the future, that's where I ask them to consider therapy because there's a lot of opportunity for them to go back and sort of re-engage in areas that may be really difficult for them or they can't even do that on their own. They need professional help. But that's not the space that I help them with. That is where a therapist could help them.
Wow, so much better said than I usually do. My differentiation is I am counseling if I work with your insurance company. I am coaching if you're paying out of pocket.
Oh, well, that's a good one
I,
too, Dan.
no, I am mostly kidding on that one. I think, yeah, for me, the difference is, and because I've done both in many situations, I'm weaving them both in, right? But I totally agree with you. Coaching is often future oriented and goal oriented and how to get there.
Yeah.
And, psychotherapy can do that in different ways, but it also, there are times we need to bring in the past or development or things like that. So I always joke in my worst Freud voice, tell me about your mother and father. That's the realm of psychotherapy. I would hope you're not asking people that in a coaching session on leadership.
I'm not. I'm not. But you know something I think we have in common when we do therapy and coaching is you tell me what you think. I feel like there are very few people in my clients' lives that carve out an hour for them and show up for them, like I'm when I show up on a client call, my do not disturb is on, my I am locked in on them. I am fully focused, dialed in. All I care about is engaging with them, listening to them, and remembering what they said success and goals look like so that I can make sure that I'm helping them get there. You're doing something similar. You're showing up for them, listening to them, and helping them get where they said they wanted to go. I think that we have that in similarity. And I think it's a rare thing for someone to have this in their life.
I think you just gave away our secrets to helping people, right? Shh, don't tell anybody that. But yeah, you're so right because we are so lacking that in our worlds today. And I often forget truly how blessed I am, and I'm sure you feel this way, to be able to do this day in and day out, hour
Yeah.
in and hour out. Like it's the end of a long week on a Friday, and I'm truly energized to spend time with you and to be able to do this because we're so focused on the conversation, and we know the flow of a good discussion can be so meaningful. But for many of us, when that discussion is centered on me and what I'm going through, it can be
Mhm.
meaningful and growth oriented in so many positive things. But to your point, we lack that in our world today. We lack that sense of true connection and true just kind of connected intimacy in that way. So I agree with you that both worlds, travel that path of just being present for somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah. So awesome we get to do that. I wanted to go along the lines. You mentioned working with somebody to clarify values
Mhm.
in their job to make sure that there's kind of an alignment and they feel purposeful in their job. What happens if there's a misalignment of values, or what would that look like? And maybe what do you do there? Because I know for me, I encounter a lot of that in my world, people being very misaligned in work. How
Mhm.
do you deal with that?
Yeah. I mean, I think it doesn't have to be extreme in the sense of like, oh, if you find out my day job, my vocation doesn't fully align with my values, I'm not suggesting you need to, leave your job tomorrow.
Right. Let's clarify that. Yeah, that's come up in my office
Clear.
many times. Like, no, no, no. I'm not saying put in your 1 week notice.
Just to be clear, that's not what I'm saying. However, I am saying that if we look at the whole of our life and the time that we have, whether that's at our vocation and our work and our job, whatever we do, and then the things that happen outside, what I typically find is if you're someone who has a job, and a lot of people do, right? We have a role that pays our bills and we are content with the job that we have, even as we recognize it doesn't align really to the values that we hold. And maybe that throws us off a little bit and we don't feel fully fulfilled by that. However, what I typically find is it's then even more important to think about that time outside of our vocation and how are we spending our time. So if I'm working with someone and they come to this realization that you just described, which is, I don't really like my job. I mean, first of all, I like people to feel like they have choice and agency over themselves. And oftentimes that's a hurdle because we might have self-limiting beliefs or things that are real things that cause us to go, I have to stay where I'm at. So if you need to stay where you're at and that's your choice to stay there, how do we then start to ensure that the time that you're outside of that job does start to pour into the things that you do hold that are as important, like your values? So maybe intentionally carving out and being more intentional to put space in that allows you to align to those values, but it's not going to be during your 8 to 5 or whatever you work. It's going to be outside of that.
I so agree. We are so aligned with that. That's such a great point. We can't always be in a role where we feel our values align, but sometimes we just need to bring a paycheck home to take care of the family, right? To
Mhm.
keep a roof over our heads. But the goal, I believe the goal should be to work towards some kind of alignment, both in work and outside life. But I tell a lot of my clients this, if home life isn't aligned and working out great, I really hope you have a job situation that is aligned where you find meaning and purpose. And if work isn't working out that great where you find that, I really hope home life is doing that. And if they're both struggling, well, then you need to we need to do some therapy. So that's such a great point. If work alignment is not there, we should strive for it. But it's sometimes easier to do that in the time you're not working.
Yep, that's right. And that's okay. I think the other thing I
Yeah.
would say is that oftentimes I think when we get ourselves into a situation where we just don't feel unfulfilled, everything feels hard, right? And I've
Mhm.
been there, like you just this bucket's empty, that bucket, all the buckets are empty today. Everything just feels hard. It can
Yeah.
be really difficult to think in a way that says it doesn't have to be extreme changes that can cause you to fill a bucket partially. You don't have to fill the bucket fully. What if we just do this little tweak? What if we do this thing? Because when people are depleted and are at their maybe worst or most depleted, it can just feel like one more thing if I say, well, what about this? And so just getting them out of that all or nothing mentality and what would an hour a week even do with that? Let's just experiment. Let's just try it and see if you feel any different.
It's so awesome. I want to transition into some other work you do, but before we do, and I'm going to ask you to plug yourself many times because I think your work is amazing and so unique, and you're just an amazing person with this. But hearing this, right? Like, where can people find out more about you and the work that you do?
Yeah, so I'm on LinkedIn. I would love to connect with people on LinkedIn. You can find me, Heather Fisher. I'm in Fishers, Indiana, so Fisher and Fishers. Hopefully, you'll remember that. And the name of my company is Thrive Vista. And again, you
Breakfast.
can find all that on LinkedIn. Would love to connect with anyone.
We will certainly put those links in the show notes. Can we talk a little bit about your board work? Right. So that's Heather Fisher, coach.
Yeah,
Heather Fisher, board member of Destiny Works.
yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that? I love the work you're doing down
Yeah, I love Destiny Work. So, founded by Dave Rodriguez in 2019. And how did I learn about this? Well, interestingly, when I was trying to figure myself out and starting to feel that still in my corporate job, but feeling that like I even feel my body start to sweat, like, right, feeling that like, oh, I'm not sure if this is what I'm supposed to be doing.
there.
I went to Dave, and he does some great work called the Calling Quilt that helps people identify their purpose and calling. I had ideas about what I thought it was, and I knew what brought me energy, but having someone, again, back to like your role, my role, having someone outside look at me and say, here's what I see in you, Heather. mirroring back things that I say that I'm like, oh, yeah, okay. Looking at the threads that go through, which I just shared with you as we started, having someone outside of everything that's going on to help you be able to discern and distill what is happening was so incredibly helpful for me. And so that's how I started with Destiny Works as a client. And Dave was my coach, and he walked me through the process, and we identified my calling and my purpose. And then there was the question of, how am I going to do that? Do I stay in the corporate world? And, which is, I had been living my purpose and calling in a lot of ways by my leadership, but I wanted something different and bigger. And that was the leap of faith to leave and to pivot and really start up my own organization and do this full time. And again, not everybody has to do that. I'm just going to say that again, not everybody has to do that. But for me, that's what worked, and that's what made sense. And so Dave and Destiny Works, and I'm now a coach also for Destiny Works, certified in this process, and we meet with people and help them do just what I described, talk through what are the things in their life, these events, positive or negative, that stand out to them, and then what threads do we start to see, and how do we help them understand the values they have, the passions that they have. Sometimes we forget, we get excited about things and passionate about things. Let's renew that spark for them and then help them really distill that down into, what do I do with that now? So that's some of the work that Destiny Works does that I get to be a part of, which is amazing.
So awesome. Love Dave and his work and the fact that you get to partner with him. I've been on his podcast, at least the Vitality Project podcast. Did I get that right?
The Vitality Journey.
The Vitality Journey. Oh,
Yes, and you were, and I think the last I heard, it was maybe the most watched podcast that we had done so
stop.
far, I think. Worth
Stop.
to share that with the audience.
Well, just wait. Dave and we were just emailing today. I'm going to appear in a couple months to talk about, yeah, I don't like, the last discussion we had was just so organic and, what are you seeing in the mental health space? And we
Yeah.
wound up talking well over our time. And I accidentally may have mentioned some of my passions, which I'm known to do, of logotherapy and psychedelic assisted therapy. And we
Yeah.
got done and he looked at me and said, wait, what? We have to talk some more. I said, well, Dave, our time is up. You have somebody else coming in the studio. He said, we have to have you come back. So we're getting together to talk logotherapy and psychedelic assisted therapy through the lens of Destiny Works and finding purpose. I'm
Mhm.
so excited for that coming up here.
I can't wait.
Yeah, well, it'll be a good one. So Dave's just such a great conversationalist, and his partner Dimitri. Oh, we had such a blast. So can't wait. Thank you for introducing me to them. Thank you for the work you do there. Boy, I had so many ideas and where to go. One of the ones. So this was sadly ironic and humorous to me. I was in the middle of a conversation, not a client meeting, just a conversation with one of my psychedelic assisted therapy peers. And as we said, anytime there's a client meeting going on, my phone is God knows where, off in other spaces. But in some of those meetings, knowing you were coming up, I had it over there and the light flashed. Heather Fisher, like, oh wow, do you need to cancel? What's going on? And you said, hey, are we still meeting today? Because I haven't gotten a link. And I said, yeah, Heather, that's how I'm operating these days. So this is where, Heather, if you don't mind, I'm going to put you on the spot. And I know a few of our friends, my friend, your husband, is going to be delighted at this.
Yeah.
And your friend's husband, my best friend, is going to roll over in his little chair. So I'm going to ask you to do some coaching here. Heather, going back to values and alignment. My values, I'm so blessed that my values align with my work and my ability to help people. We live in a world where so many people need help in so many different ways. Thank goodness you are out there still helping. What I've found, though, as you experienced with my lack of sending a link today, is my
Mhm.
calendar is way too busy. My
Mm.
primary calling is to sit with people for 55 minutes. No, that's not my calling. That's what I was taught to do. To sit with people for 55 to 59 minutes every hour and
Mhm.
to help counsel or coach them to a more meaningful, purposeful, resilient life. And then people find out I'm doing this stuff and I get invited on podcasts or to work in a mental health app development company. That's fascinating. The Cardion app is going to do so many cool things. I studied psychedelic assisted therapy, so I'm putting on retreats for people that take days, sometimes weeks. Different projects. Your husband has talked to me about men's peer groups. There's all of these cool ways to help people,
Yeah.
but it tends to be a little overwhelming, Heather. And I tend to misplace important things like sending Heather Fisher a link to a podcast. In the work that I'm doing, if I'm doing too much or feeling overwhelmed, Heather, how would you coach me around that or out of that? Or what do I need to improve there on my calendar?
Use me.
No worries.
My allergies are getting me. I think the first thing I would ask when you think about that work that you're doing and the calendar that is maybe bursting at the seams, when you
Good.
think about that work, what's important about that work to you?
Oh, I thought you were asking what part was important. I was going to jokingly say all of it, but it all is. What's important in those parts? I've always said, ever since I studied logotherapy, I always wanted to help people in bigger and better ways. I annoyed my professors by telling them more people need to know about this. And so I find that to be the calling, is to get that good work of meaning and purpose out to as many people as I can.
Yeah. What's that feel like?
My heart's fluttering just talking about it. I'm getting the chills, maybe even a little tear in my eye. It's just so meaningful for me.
Yeah. When you think about that calendar being bursting at the seams, what does that tell you?
That I'm doing a lot.
Hmm. And how does that feel?
Exhilarating and exhausting.
Mm, tell me more about what exhausting feels like.
By the I don't know, because I don't allow myself to feel that. That's interesting. So I know going into looking at a busy calendar, I'm like, I got to do all the things. And then I
Mhm.
go do the things. I'm like, that was so awesome. I got to hang out with Heather for an hour with nobody bothering us with their silly questions or drink requests. And like, we had an amazing conversation. And again, I feel truly blessed that every hour I do that, even difficult client sessions feel very purposeful and meaningful.
Mhm.
So but they are taxing. So by the end of the day, like Wednesdays are my worst because my clinical week butts up to Wednesday. By 7 o'clock Wednesday, I come sit on the couch and Daisy looks at me and she says, "Wow, you're Daisy. You've met Daisy. Daisy, no,
Daisy, sweet
you
Daisy.
know Daisy.
Yes.
Daisy, the counter surfer, says, "Wow, you look kind of tired." And my wife knows Michelle usually goes somewhere else. She's like, "You just need to decompress." And so that's
Mhm.
what I do.
Yeah, I would say if we were in a coaching session for longer, because we could spend a long time on that, I would start to dig into a little bit about what's the real challenge with that. I think
Mm,
that's always a question, like what's important to people is a good question. What's the real challenge in that? So your schedule is overflowing, it's really busy. What's the real challenge in that? And maybe
yeah.
what I just heard you say is, well, I don't really give myself much time to think about what the real challenge in that is. And so then I would probably start to think about how much we're pouring out versus how much we're getting filled up.
Mm,
Because if someone's calendar is overfilled for a long time and they don't allow themselves the space to really think, we can sometimes start to go off track a little bit. And the very thing that gets us excited, we lose ourselves a little bit because we're not creating the space to be able to replenish, reset. Maybe we do that periodically through a day off or a vacation, but how do you make that a rhythm or a cadence in your life? And if you don't do that, I have talked to a lot of people that butt up right against to like burnout or not being able to sustainably do the great things that you do.
okay. Heather, you're an amazing coach. That was spot on. Like, yep, like that resonates so well. And I love what you said there, that when you do that for too long, it's not sustainable, right? It's not sustainable in that I forget to send important emails to people I'm going to chat with in the afternoon. So for me, and what I would tell other people too, right? Well, you got to find that break. But I like what you added there too. And I think that's something we often forget. I know I do. It's not a break every once in a while, right? You said a great word there. It's a cadence. How do
Mhm.
you build that into life? And that's beautiful.
Yeah, I think I work with imagine leaders. I work predominantly with leaders. And
Mhm.
typically the leaders, when you're in a leadership position, you're pouring out, right? You're giving to your team, and that's important. And I would say that's great. You need to do that. And if you do that at the cost of, or you kind of put your flag in the ground, and often people do, to say, well, I almost as a badge of honor, like, well, I don't take time for myself. I only take care of others, and I need to take care of my team. I need to take care of this person. And again, as a badge of honor, to do that really doesn't benefit your team in the long run.
I believe that's something that's, or yourself, right? I believe that's something inherent in being a psychotherapist. Is we get a 5 minute lecture somewhere around year two about, now be careful of burnout because it will happen, and then that's it. And then
Oh,
they kick us out and they're like, all right, now go figure out what that means. But you make a really good point. If you're not taking care of yourself, eventually you're no good for anybody else.
yeah.
So what does that, where do you guide people in that? What does that mean? I love your phrase there, to pour into yourself. What are
Mm.
some recommendations there? What could I or some other person receiving your coaching do to pour into themselves?
Yeah, I feel like the biggest bang for your buck, where you get the most out of that, is if you have clarity on your values. Go back to that values work. Because this is where, remember, a value is a deeply held belief. It's the thing that or things, usually have multiple, not just one, that I care most about. The thing that I was like, get up and start to, if something like that thing that I care so much about, if we have clarity on that, then we can start to see, like we talked about before, this exercise of where are you getting that? Where in your time are you pouring into that? I love to help people, and I get to do that in coaching. And I also like to do that in other ways. And so what I find, rest and pouring in might look different. I'm not suggesting it's just laying on the couch. I also know that one of my values is nature and being outside and feeling sort of that air and sun. And so a walk for me, it's not resting. I'm not sitting on the couch, but that is going to reset, fill me up. If I get to go for a 30-minute walk, and I love to do that with my best friend, by the way, if we get to go on a walk, I'm solid. I'm good for the day.
Yeah.
So it's not a recipe or a quick, like, oh, do this or do that. And be careful of people that want to give sort of a blanket statement of, oh, just do this. It's, I think, importantly, knowing yourself first,
Yeah.
which you have to create space to do that. Know what is important and what's true about yourself, get that clarity, and then we start to think about, okay, where do you get that recharge? Because now we're clear on who you are and what you need.
Wow, you're hired. Can I bring you on as my coach? Like I
I think we'd have a lot of fun.
oh, we would have such a good time. And I know, so one of your other superpowers, besides helping people, that I'm sure resets you, is your amazing ability to plan vacations and
Mhm.
amazing opportunities for people. So excited to spend time with you and your family coming up here and resetting in nature. And look, we talked about this. This was kind of the off-camera conversation before we started. I have to put it out there. We travel in similar circles. We travel together, our
Mhm.
families. And those that we travel with and that know us and we're closest to have no idea that you and I are talking and recording this right now. So
Oh,
you know who you are, and we got you.
yeah, we
I
did.
so got you so good that here it is today, and you won't even know about this for a couple days. So can't wait to hear what you have to say. Heather, it is such a blessing just to know you, but to have spent this time together. Thank you so much. Your work is so important, so meaningful. I hope people come and find you. And this idea of values kind of excavation, values understanding is so important just to a healthy life overall. And it's just amazing that you're doing that.
Thank you, Dan. Thanks for asking me to come on. And I love the work that you're doing. And I think it's funny, when we first met each other, you didn't realize what I did. I didn't realize as much. And over the years that we've known each other, so much commonality in things around how we approach our work and what we think is important. And I love the work that you're doing with the Meaning Project. So thank you for inviting me on.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been my pleasure. Hey, I'll see you in a couple weeks. Take
Okay,
care.
sounds good.